I always believed family was meant to be a refuge, the one place where betrayal could never reach you. My late wife Martha used to say that blood ties were like roots, holding us steady even when storms threatened to tear us apart. But the night I stepped into my son Daniel's kitchen, I discovered just how wrong I'd been. What I saw there twisted every belief I'd held about loyalty, about trust, about love between a father and a child. And in that moment, with my hands trembling against the countertop, I realized the only thing left to do was call 911, because Daniel hadn't just betrayed me, he'd crossed into something darker, something criminal. The story didn't begin that night. It had been unraveling for years, in moments I brushed off, in signs I excused because he was my son. Daniel was my only child, the boy Martha and I had poured every ounce of our love into. I was an engineer for 4 decades, the kind of man who measured life in schedules, blueprints, careful plans. Daniel, though he was different, charming, quick to smile, quick to explain away mistakes. I used to call him my dreamer, while Martha worried he was more of a schemer. She wasn't wrong. After Martha passed away, Daniel became my closest link. To the family, his wife Clara and their 2 children filled the silence of my empty house on weekends. I paid for birthdays, family vacations, and even the down payment on their home. I told myself it was what Martha would have wanted to keep Daniel safe, supported, cushioned from the hard edges of life. But what I didn't realize was that all this time, he wasn't just leaning on me. He was sharpening the knife he'd eventually drive into my back. It was a Thursday when Daniel called. His voice had that carefully measured tone, the one he used when he needed something. "Dad, we'd love to have you over for dinner this weekend. Clara's trying a new recipe. Bring that bottle of Merlot you've been saving." Something about the invitation tugged at me. Daniel rarely invited me. I was the one who extended the offers. But I wanted to believe it was genuine, that maybe he was finally stepping into the role of son, of host, of family man. So Saturday evening found me in my car driving across the bridge toward his neatly painted suburban home. The kids were in the living room. Mia with her crayons, Ethan glued to a cartoon. Clara smiled at me from the kitchen doorway, flour dusting her apron. Everything looked normal, too normal. But when Daniel called out from the backyard asking me to grab something from the counter, my life split into a before and after. I stepped into his kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound. But then my eyes locked on the cutting board. Laid out in precise, deliberate lines were small baggies, white powder, not sugar, not flour. I didn't need a laboratory test to recognize what it was. Years of corporate life had shown me enough men undone by that poison to know its face immediately. Next to it sat a scale, faint residue dusting its surface.
My son's handwriting was scrawled across a notepad beside the pile, weights, dollar
Amounts, initials, ledger of deals. And then beside it, like some grotesque cherry on top of a poisoned sundae, sat my own name. "Dad, next week." My heart slammed against my ribs. The air felt heavy, sour. I staggered backward, bumping into the counter. My mind screamed 1,000 possibilities. Was Daniel selling this filth? Was he planning to use me as a mule? A scapegoat? Some kind of twisted shield? And what did next week mean? That's when I heard footsteps. Clara's soft voice floated from the hallway. "Daniel, do you think your dad suspects anything?" I froze. Every part of me wanted to believe I'd misheard. But then Daniel's voice followed, casual, low, like he was discussing the weather. "He won't. He trusts me too much. He'll be the perfect cover." Cover. The word stabbed deeper than any knife. My son, my flesh and blood, was planning to use me in whatever operation he was running. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. My hands shook as I pulled my phone from my pocket. I hadn't wanted to see it, hadn't wanted to believe Martha's worried whispers all those years ago, but now there was no denying it. My son was a criminal, and worse, he was willing to drag me into the darkness he'd chosen. I stepped quietly into the pantry, heart pounding, and dialed. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's calm voice steadied me, lowered my tone, keeping my words measured. "My name is Lee Willis. I'm at my son's house in Oakland. There are narcotics distribution amounts laid out in the kitchen. I believe my son and his wife are involved. Please send officers immediately. I'll remain on the line until they arrive. Every word felt like fire in my throat. To report my own son, but what choice did I have? I stayed silent. I'd be complicit. If I confronted him, I might not walk out alive. The dispatcher assured me officers were en route. I tucked the phone close, my pulse hammering as Daniel and Clara's voices drifted closer. We'll move the product tonight, Daniel said. Dad will never know. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not just trust, not just faith, but the last tether holding me back from accepting the truth. My son wasn't a dreamer. He wasn't a schemer. He was a predator. I was his prey. 10 minutes stretched like an eternity. I could hear Clara moving pans, Daniel laughing as if nothing were amiss. My eyes kept flicking to the bags on the counter, each one a silent accusation. Then the headlights flashed across the window. The sound of car doors slamming, knock at the door, firm and authoritative. Police, open up. Clara froze mid-step. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. Dad, what did you do? His tone wasn't fearful. It was an accusation. As if I were the traitor, the next moments unfolded like a slow-motion nightmare.
Ow!
Officers streamed into the kitchen, their flashlights slicing through the room. One barked orders while another swept the counter, photographing, bagging evidence. Daniel's face drained of color, then flushed crimson with fury. You called them? He hissed, his voice low, venomous. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The sight of him being handcuffed, his wrists bound behind his back, was both shattering and relieving. Clara's shrill protests filled the air, insisting it was all a mistake, that the drugs weren't theirs, that I must have planted them. But the evidence spoke louder than her words. The children's voices rose from the living room, frightened, confused. Mom? Dad? What's happening? I wanted to go to them, to shield them from the sight of their parents being let out in handcuffs. But the officers guided me aside, their questions precise, professional. Sir, are you the one who reported this? Yes, I managed. I'm his father. He was going to involve me. I saw my name written in his notes. The officer nodded grimly. You did the right thing, sir. We'll need a full statement. As Daniel was led past me, his eyes locked on mine. The look he gave me was pure hatred, a silent promise of retribution. For a fleeting moment, guilt gnawed at me. But then I remembered the ledger, the word cover, the plan to use me as a shield. No, this wasn't betrayal for me. This was justice. Outside, the night air was cool, the flashing lights painting the quiet street in red and blue. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispers rising like smoke. The image of Daniel shoved into the back of a squad car would linger in their memories for years. And as the car pulled away, carrying my son toward the consequences he'd earned, I felt both hollow and alive. Hollow because a part of me had died that night. Alive because I had chosen justice over blind loyalty. But what I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning, because Daniel wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. And the real revenge, the kind that would strip him of everything he thought untouchable, was still waiting to be written. The silence in my car after the squad cars left was louder than any siren. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale as though, if I let go, I'd fall into the emptiness opening inside me. I had just sent my only son to jail. Any other father might have begged forgiveness, might have blamed himself, but I knew better. Daniel had looked me in the eye and decided I was expendable, a tool, a cover for his crimes. That call tonight, I would have been trapped in his web, maybe worse. Still, guilt gnawed at me, like a restless animal. I drove home through the quiet Oakland streets, headlights sweeping over familiar houses that suddenly looked foreign. At every stoplight, I could see Martha's face in the rearview mirror, her gentle eyes searching mine. Would she have forgiven me, or would she have told me what I already knew? That protecting Daniel at this point was protecting a monster. Sleep didn't come easily that night. My phone buzzed with missed calls from unknown numbers, likely Clara or someone from her family. I turned it off. In the stillness of my home, surrounded by Martha's photographs and the soft tick of her grandmother's clock, I realized something crucial. Daniel's arrest was only the first step. People like him didn't crumble with one blow. They twisted, adapted, and fought back. And if I wasn't careful, he'd find a way to drag me down with him. The next morning, I drove to the county courthouse, my documentation folder under my arm. Old habits from years of engineering made me meticulous. I'd saved everything. Text. Messages where Daniel demanded money, receipts for vacations I'd funded, even threatening voicemails when I once refused to cover his debts. Each one painted a picture. Not of a son in need, but of a predator exploiting his father. I requested an urgent consultation with a lawyer, Bruce Harlan, a man Martha's brother once recommended for estate planning. His office was in San Francisco, a 15th floor suite overlooking the bay, with polished marble floors and mahogany desks that told you every hour of his time carried a price tag. "Mr. Willis," Bruce said as he shook my hand, "you mentioned urgent family matters over the phone. Let's get into it." I laid the file before him like evidence at trial. Bank statements. The note with my name on Daniel's ledger is a written account of what I saw in the kitchen. "My son was arrested last night for possession and distribution of narcotics," I began, "but I believe this goes deeper. He's been financially dependent on me for 2 decades. He's threatened me when I refused. Now I have proof he intended to involve me in his crimes. I need protection legally, financially, and permanently." Bruce listened without interrupting, occasionally scribbling notes on his legal pad. His face was unreadable until I finished. Then he leaned back, folding his hands. "Mr. Willis, what you've described isn't just parental disappointment. This is attempted financial coercion, possible conspiracy, and a clear pattern of exploitation. You were wise to document everything. Now tell me what you want to happen." The question hung in the air. For years I had wanted nothing but Daniel's success, his happiness. But last night had burned that wish to ashes. "I want him out of my life," I said, "completely. I want to make sure he never benefits from a cent of what I've built. I want every measure in place to protect myself from retaliation." Bruce nodded slowly. "Then we start with your will. Right now, is your son your primary beneficiary?" "Yes." My throat tightened around the word. Martha and I always thought. I trailed off. Bruce's voice was firm but not unkind. "Then that changes today. We'll draft a new will that excludes him entirely, redirecting your estate. 2 organizations that matter to you: education, veterans, and community causes. People who will value what you've built. And to prevent him from contesting, we'll include detailed documentation of his exploitation and the threats you've received. Combined with his current criminal charges, no court will overturn it." Relief washed through me like cool water. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the weight begin to lift. Over the next hour, Bruce walked me through options: charitable trusts, endowments, legal clauses that not only excluded Daniel, but also specifically cited his misconduct. As justification, it wasn't just about cutting him off. It was about building iron walls he could never scale. We scheduled the signing for the following week. With witnesses and a video recording to confirm my competency, every step was precise, deliberate, airtight. As I left Bruce's office, the city stretched out before me, the bay glittering in the afternoon sun. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to Daniel's chaos, I was building something stronger than his manipulation: justice. The days that followed were eerily calm. I took morning walks through my neighborhood, nodding to familiar faces. I cooked simple meals for myself, read in Martha's chair, even tended to her old garden. But under the surface, anticipation simmered, because I knew Daniel would come for me. Arrests and handcuffs didn't change a man like him. They only made him more desperate. Sure enough, a week later, as I signed the final will in Bruce's conference room, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. Then another. And another. Bruce glanced at me as he notarized. "The documents." "You don't need to answer," he said calmly. This is your moment, not his. When the last signature was sealed and the witnesses confirmed, Bruce slid the envelope toward me. It's done. Legally binding. Simon or Daniel, in your case, no longer has a claim to your estate. I tucked the envelope under my arm. Weight felt like armor. That night, as expected, Clara showed up at my door. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red from crying or from rage. How could you? She spat before I could even greet her. He's your son. He was set up. Those drugs weren't his? You ruined his life. I didn't flinch. He ruined his own life. And you helped him. Her face twisted. The children. Think of your grandchildren. What will they do without support? That hit harder than I wanted to admit. But I held firm. They'll learn to stand on their own 2 feet. They'll have opportunities, real ones, through scholarships, through foundations. But they won't inherit money for Daniel to waste on poison. Her voice dropped to a hiss. He'll fight this. He won't stop until he gets what's his. I stepped forward, meeting her glare. Then let him try. I've prepared for every move he can make. He'll find nothing but locked doors. She left in a storm of slammed doors and muttered curses. But I felt no fear. The line had been drawn. 2 weeks later, I got word that Daniel was out on bail. Predictably, the calls started again. Angry voicemails, threats, even a message saying he'd see me soon. I forwarded everything to Bruce, who filed restraining orders and added the evidence to my growing record. The confrontation came at the airport. I knew they'd be flying back from a trip arranged by Clara's parent, one last taste of luxury before reality swallowed them. Bruce insisted on accompanying me. Family meetings after betrayal, he said, reveal true priorities. Stood in the arrivals terminal, the leather portfolio under Bruce's arm. Carrying every document, every signature, every proof, my heart beat steady, not with fear, but with resolve. The crowd spilled out of the sliding doors, tanned families with leis, tourists lugging souvenirs, and then I saw them. Clara bustling ahead with shopping bags, kids running excitedly. Toward me, it's Daniel. Last of all, his swagger dulled but not gone, his eyes darting the moment he spotted Bruce at my side. Dad. His voice was half disbelief, half anger. What are you doing here? I crouched to embrace the children first, their little arms wrapping around me, with the innocence that only deepened my resolve. Then I rose, steady and calm, welcoming you home. Bruce stepped forward, his movements precise. Willis, he said, extending the sealed envelope. This is a copy of your father's revised last will, executed on June 2nd, 2025. You are no longer a beneficiary. The color drained from Daniel's face as he tore open the seal. His eyes flicked across the legal text, disbelief hardening into fury. Clara read over his shoulder, her lips parting in horror. This can't be real, Daniel muttered. You can't just— I can, I interrupted, my voice calm, and I did. You tried to use me as your cover, Daniel. Turned me into your target. Now you'll live with the consequences. The terminal noise faded into background static as travelers slowed to watch. Clara's voice trembled. Think of the children I did, I said firmly. That's why the Oakland Children's Education Foundation will receive $400,000. You see, Berkeley will get scholarships in my name, senior services, veterans programs, all causes that matter. The money will build lives instead of destroying them. Daniel's voice rose, desperation leaking through his anger. I'll fight this. I'll prove you were manipulated, that you're not thinking clearly. Bruce handed him a business card with practiced calm. We anticipated that. The video recording of your father's competency will speak for itself. Pursue frivolous litigation if you wish. It will only add to your debts. Daniel crumpled the papers, then smoothed them frantically, as if the words might change. But they didn't. They never would. The children clung to Clara, confused, frightened by the raised voices. I looked at them, at their innocent eyes, and I felt a pang of sorrow. They would never understand fully why their future had shifted. But someday, maybe, they'd realize it was their father's greed, not their grandfather's justice, that had stolen their inheritance. As Bruce and I turned to leave, Daniel's voice rang out behind us, raw and frantic. "You'll regret this. You're still my father." I didn't look back. "No, Daniel. I was your father. Now I'm the man who finally stopped enabling you." The walk out of that terminal felt like shedding decades of chains. Each step was lighter, steadier. Justice had been served not through violence or vengeance, but through truth, law, and unshakable resolve. That night, back in my quiet home, I sat in Martha's armchair with a cup of tea. The sign will lie on my desk, the charitable organizations waiting for my call in the morning. I thought of the kitchen where it had all begun, the bags, the scale, the ledger with my name. And I felt the final weight lift. Daniel had tried to turn me into his cover. Instead, I had turned his betrayal into his undoing. And as the clock ticked softly in the corner, I whispered to the empty room, "Justice served. Martha, I hope you're proud," because I was.